respect to our speaker here. Screens down, phones away, don't do homework. He's here, he's taking his time to come and talk to us, so you are going to be quiet and listen. All right,
All right. Para presentarme un poco, me llamo Brett Beebe. Hace 4 años me gradué de Liberty High School. Y después de eso me fui al Perú. Ahí aprendí a hablar español, como pueden ver y escuchar. Y también aprendí mucho de la cultura de Sudamérica. Y aprendí mucho de lo que, no sé, de las experiencias que tienen otras personas. So, to present myself a little bit, my name is Brett Beebe. 4 years ago, I graduated from Liberty High School. Right after I graduated, so I graduated in what, May? And then I went to Peru that July. And I was in Peru for 2 years, where I learned to speak Spanish, and I learned a lot about like South American culture and just kind of the experiences that other people in the world have. So this is a picture of the place that I spent most of my time. This is the Plaza de Armas in Arequipa. So Arequipa is, it's this big city at the base of a volcano, which is pretty cool. There's actually 2 other volcanoes that kind of like rim the city. I don't know how to explain that, but it's like you look and here's Chichani, here's Misty, and here's Pichu Pichu. It's pretty cool. Kind of scary though. Every time there was an earthquake, oh my gosh, volcano's gonna blow, we're gonna die. Never happened. So here I am. So Mrs. Lynn asked me to talk a little bit about what it was like learning Spanish. And she wanted me to talk a little bit about what it has been like since I've been back in the United States. And kind of the experiences that I've had thanks to being able to speak Spanish. So when I first got to Peru, I thought I knew quite a bit of Spanish because I took only up to Spanish 3, and then I said, I know Spanish, I'm smart, and I stopped taking Spanish. So all my friends took Spanish 4 and Spanish 5, and I said, I don't need that, I'll never speak Spanish in my life, and if I do, I know how to say, where's the bathroom, so I'm good, right? Turns out, I showed up in Peru, and that was not enough. People would like ask me questions and stuff, and I'm like, what are you saying? I have no idea. I was totally lost. So where I actually started my process of learning Spanish was kind of back in the same place that we start here in the classroom. I had this little book that had Spanish grammar, and I just started with, okay, you know, present tense verbs, which verbs are irregular, like sentence structure, and then I moved on to, okay, when I wanted to get fancy, how to use the subjunctive, how to use imperfect subjunctive, because if you can do that, then that's pretty great. And so I actually started back with a lot of those basics that you guys learn here in the classroom. And it took me about 3 months of studying for an hour or 2 every day and going out and speaking with people to get to the point where I actually felt comfortable in the conversation. After about a year of this same sort of program of study, I felt almost as comfortable speaking in Spanish as I did in English. At the end of my 2 years in Peru, a lot of the Peruvians that I knew would be like writing emails to their family, and they'd say, hey, am I spelling this right? And I'd say, no, you're not. Not only that, but that's the wrong form of the verb you're using, man. Like, but I got home and I actually, for the first little bit I was home, I was looking for opportunities to use what I had learned down there. And one thing that I found, I started doing medical interpreting. I did not learn a lot of medical terms while I was in Peru because my work consisted, I was a missionary, so what I did down there was mostly talking to people about my church and stuff, and just day-to-day stuff. I was never really like, okay, so how's your liver doing? how are you feeling about this? But after a few months, I found that I really enjoyed it. So I've been working as a medical interpreter for about a year and a half. And it's been really, really rewarding. I remember while I was in Peru, there was one time that I went to the doctor, and here I am, this American guy who knows very little Spanish and knows no medical terminology. And the doctor's like, so what's wrong with you? And I'm like, I don't even know what you just said, you know? And so I thought about it, and I thought about the people here who have that same experience. Whatever circumstances of life have brought them here, and for whatever reason that they still are unfamiliar with a lot of those terms, that's going to be a really scary thing. Going to the doctor, you need help, and you can't even understand what they're asking you, let alone explain what you're going through. That's a hard thing. And so it's been really rewarding. It's been a really cool chance for me to be able to give back. I'm looking at getting my certification. Right now I work at a clinic, but I would like to get the national certification so that I can work at hospitals and stuff, because I think that would be just a really neat thing. So that's pretty much the questions that you wanted me to address.
Excellent. Thank you.
So if you guys have any questions before I just start kind of going through pictures and stuff, let's hear it.
They're shy.
Yeah? Okay.
You can
If it
rephrase
comes
your
back,
question
let me
and come
know.
back to it.
Some people ask if I dream in Spanish. Actually, I didn't dream in Spanish until like 3 months ago. I had a dream all of entirely in Spanish, and I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, I can do that. Yeah, okay. Let's see
What
questions.
kind of things have you had to interpret?
So I have done, I've helped with physical therapy. So people describing their pain, describing what hurts, helping translate the movements that the physical therapist wants them to do, that kind of stuff, as well as ophthalmology, asking about their eyes. A lot of triage, just how are you today, what brings you in here, telling them where to take blood pressure and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Any questions about There is, in Arequipa, there's a McDonald's, and it's like a 4-star restaurant. It's a big deal to go to McDonald's. But that is the only McDonald's for the space of 100, 150 miles.
Wait, did you go in there?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I did. And you know what? The pancakes, dang it. After a year of not having pancakes, those are some of the best pancakes I've had in a long time.
Nice little suburbs.
Yeah. Yeah. Not as good as McDonald's here though. Yeah.
What was your favorite thing about the trip?
Okay, favorite thing about the trip. Okay, I have to say, my favorite thing about it was interacting with people from the Inca culture. So, a little bit of history about Peru. A long time ago, before the Spanish came, the Inca Empire stretched through Peru, Chile, a little bit of Bolivia, a little bit into Colombia. And they spoke Quechua. And there's a lot of people in Peru today who, one, still speak Quechua as their primary language, and two, still follow a lot of the Inca traditions. They still wear a lot of the traditional Inca clothes. It's pretty cool. And I learned how to sing happy birthday in Quechua, so I do that all the time, even if it's not someone's birthday. No, I don't do that. But as far as like me as a person, my favorite part was just like I got to see things that you don't see here. You know, I saw people that, you know, all they had was 4 basket woven walls and they had a bed and they slept in the dirt. You know, it was crazy. It was the wildest thing that I had ever experienced. But at the same time, a lot of those people were really happy. You know, they worked hard and they loved their families and they were happy. And that was something really neat that I got to see and be a part of. There was even a period of a month where we had no running water. That was pretty crazy. And all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, you know, these places where people don't have running water, that's a real problem, you know? That's serious stuff. I didn't shower for a month. Can you imagine how gross you smell and feel after a month? And there's people who live like that because there's just, you know, there's no infrastructure there. It's crazy. Yeah?
What did you drink?
Cool thing is, they do sell a lot of bottled water. So bottled water was how I lived. Even if we had to like buy a really gross kind of bottled water. They had this, it was called like San Mateo, and we called it San Caño, which means like holy tap water. Because it was really nasty. Sometimes, I mean, you just, you know, you did what you could. You boiled river water if you had to, whatever you could do.
In Peru, how do they say, like, if something is cool or awesome, what's the expression they
They
use?
say
for-
chévere.
Chévere.
Yeah.
If something is, like, bad, what do they-
Gosh, what would they say? Probably just say like, que feo. How ugly. That's pretty normal. Sometimes they would like mess the words up a lot, which is a lot of fun. Like, instead of saying chévere, you can say like chéverazo, which is like super chévere, super awesome. But I reserved that only for like really good chicken. Another thing that's really cool, animal control in the United States is pretty sweet. I got bit by a dog one time down there. There's a lot of just like feral dogs roaming the streets. Anytime a motorcycle went by, there'd just be like a pack of dogs chasing them, and they'd just be like kicking at them, you know, like, dog, and you're like, dude, that's awesome. But, you know, there's a lot of things that we take for granted here. You know, down there, I remember there was one time this guy got pulled over and a couple of missionaries were with him, and the policeman's like, all right, here's your ticket. And the guy says, well, here's 20 soles, which is like $8. He's like, you want to just take it and pretend it's to him? The cop took the money. Like, can you imagine? That's $8. Like, there's a lot, so there's a lot of things that I came to appreciate a lot more here. I mean, it's not perfect. America's got its problems. But there's definitely a lot of things that I saw down there that made me realize how good we have it. Definitely we have really good food. Peruvian food, some of it's really awesome. Let me show you guys some pictures of some of the stuff I ate. Okay. This is my favorite.
What is that?
That's a guinea pig. So in Peru and Bolivia, it's pretty common to eat guinea pig. So you like, you'll like walk into someone's house and there will be a cage and you just hear like cheep, 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 and it's guinea pigs in there. And I'd go through and I'd be like, all right, I'll name you breakfast, you lunch, you dinner. It's really not that great. It's actually.
Wait, what does it taste like?
Chicken?
Have you ever had frog legs?
No.
Yeah.
It's kind of in between frog legs and chicken. Like it's got that kind of like weird, like I don't know, froggy taste. Yeah. This is the dish in Arequipa. This is called rocoto relleno, which means stuffed hot pepper. So it's like a bell pepper, but it's super spicy, and they stuff it with like beef and cheese and olives and eggs. And then that beside it is called pastel de papa, which literally means potato cake. But it's just, they make a layer of potatoes, a layer of cheese, a layer of potato, a layer of cheese, a layer of potatoes, a layer of cheese, and they bake it, and it's like, whoa. So, to get that at a restaurant, that's probably, at a good restaurant, that'll be 11 or 12 soles.
What's that in America?
So that's $7 or $8. This. Okay, this is called ceviche. It looks really gross and it sounds really gross. Because what it is raw fish that they dice up and then they they'll marinate it in salt and lemon and some chili pepper sauce, or they'll put chili pepper powder in there. Sounds really gross. It's so good. It's so good. So they serve that with camote, or just yams or sweet potatoes, whatever you call it. And sometimes they'll throw in crab, some mollusks. It's awesome. Yeah.
What drinks do they have?
In general? So a lot of.
We're good, that's only halfway.
Okay, cool. Whoa. So what a lot of them, they drink a lot of papaya juice. There's a lot of fruit that grows down there. So a lot of their, what they drink has to do with that. They also drink what's called chicha, which is a drink that they make with purple corn. It's pretty good.
Is that Inca Cola? Is that?
Oh yeah, and Inca Cola. They drink a ton of Inca Cola, and it is so good. It's like bubble gum in soda form, which sounds really weird, but it's so. I should have brought some. But you guys will have to try it at some point. It's way good. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Do you want to talk about the work that you do down here?
Sure, yeah. Okay, so, what I did down there, as a missionary, my primary goal was what we call proselyting. So, my primary objective was just to go door to door and talk to people about what I believed and talk about how I thought that would help their lives. And I met people from all kinds of different backgrounds. It was super cool. As I look back, I made a lot of lifelong friends. There's a lot of people that, when they first let us into their house, they were like, yeah, these guys are missionaries, they don't want to was awesome. I saw a lot of people. I saw a lot of people change their lives, and for me, the most gratifying experience there is to know that because I was there for someone, they are a happier or healthier human being. You know, to me, there's nothing more satisfying than that. And that was something that I got to do. That was my primary objective. When people needed, if there was like a natural disaster, like one time, it rained in this city that hadn't seen rain in 11 years, right? So the city is like in this little river valley with this big mountain beside it, and all their houses are built out of adobe, right? So it's just like clay and dirt that they packed together and built the house out of. So imagine what happens when it rains, right? People's houses, not only did they flood, but some of the houses were falling down. So we helped clean up, we helped people rebuild. There was this family that this grandma was taking care of her grandson, and they had just one room, and they were having to cook in the same room as they were sleeping and studying and stuff. And it was a fire hazard, and it just, you know, we saw that we could help. So we went and we bought brick, and we bought mortar, and we built another room onto their house. I can say I built the house. I can't say it was a good one. But I did it, and it was really cool. I know I keep saying really cool. In my lingo, that means it was a rewarding experience. It kind of, you know, I think we're all kind of trying to find some kind of meaning. And those experiences helping people, you know, giving whatever you can, whatever you have, those are the experiences that kind of fill that thing that you're searching for. And, you know, learning Spanish was really hard. Being in Peru was really hard. Getting bit by dogs, getting chased by dogs, going without water. During that time, I was assigned a companion that I was supposed to be with at all times. And in the whole 2 years, all but one of the people I was assigned to were native Spanish speakers. Is that?
No, that's a lunch shift passing.
Okay. But it was like, it was hard. Like, I showed up and I'm thinking, okay, you know, they're gonna pair me up with some other guy from the United States that speaks English and he's gonna teach me Spanish, right? They paired me up with this guy from Ecuador who thought I should be able to learn Spanish in a week and was really mad when I did. He's like, you are not working hard enough. I'm like, dude, that's a lot to learn in a week, right? But I wouldn't take it back. I wouldn't take back any of it because thanks to that experience, my eyes have been opened to a whole, you know, to a whole new experience. You know, seeing the kind of life that other people live and the kind of hardships that other people have. You know, compared to like, I mean, yeah, it was tough, but you know, I had my parents sending me a stipend and stuff. Like, you know, even in the hardest times, like, I was never really afraid. But I saw people, and I, you know, I visited people who didn't know where their next meal was going to come from. They didn't have any guarantee that, you know, they were going to be able to keep, you know, their family business or even put food on the table for their kids. And it just, it kind of, I don't know, it kind of opened something that I hadn't seen before. Yeah.
How did people respond to you when you said you were a missionary?
Well, it depends. Most of the time they were just like, well, I'm Catholic. And I'd be like, well, that's really cool. Like, good on you. But sometimes it really just depended on the reputation that the missionaries had there. But a lot of times they knew that we, if they needed some kind of help, we would be there. They knew that, my goal was never to like shove what I believed down anyone's throats. My goal was always just kind of to present, say, this is what I believe is right. I see these ways it could help you. And so the people who have, there was a lot of people who were just kind of like, yeah, that's cool, come talk. And, I don't have any plans of joining your church or anything, but I'll feed you. They always fast. Man, I ate so much. Good thing is, every once in a while I get salmonella and drop all the weight I gained. So we'd go from, there'd be days that we'd probably have, dinner at 4 different houses, because it's a culture thing. For them to give food to somebody, it's how they demonstrate like camaraderie and respect. And regardless of whether, a lot of people, when we would go over there, they would feed us stuff that was a lot better than what they were usually eating. They would kind of splurge. And it was really humbling, because here I was, and like, I was not in any danger of starving. Like, I had a lot of food. And even with their difficult situations, they would buy extra food. And even if I had to eat until I felt like I was going to puke, I did it because, it made them, the same way that I felt good about what I was doing for them, they felt good about giving me that food. That was their way of giving something to us. So, does that answer your question? Okay.
How did they react to you as an American? Did you get people who were trying to practice English on you?
Oh, all the time, yeah. And actually, at night, the drunk people on the streets, they were the most confident people with their English. Hey, gringo, how are you? I'm good, and you? But yeah, there's a lot of people in South America learning to speak English. Statistically, it improves your salary by like, I think it's like 60%. So that's a pretty big deal. So we would teach a lot of English classes and stuff, which was pretty fun. The best English class I ever taught, there's this Argentinian in there. And Argentinians there, they have a really different accent. Everyone in Peru in South America speaks Spanish a little differently. The Argentinians, the double L and the Y, they pronounce as sh. So the instructor wrote yellow and jello on the board, trying to teach, because a lot of times, like when we're in the classroom, we pronounce it me llamo, right? But down there, a lot of the time they'll pronounce it me llamo, a little more J in there, right? So this instructor's like, all right, can somebody volunteer to read the words on the board? This guy from Argentina raises his hand and he goes, Shelo, Shelo. We're all like, no! It was pretty funny. He did it on purpose. He actually spoke English really well. Out of all the people I met down there, he was probably top 5 English speakers that I met. Yeah, but they definitely tried to like take advantage of me a lot. Like when I first got there, like my companion would always have to be the one to like talk to the taxi drivers and stuff. Because if they talked to him, they could be like, no, let's go for 8 soles, let's go for 6. If I talked to him, they'd be like, 15 soles. Not only 15 soles. And I'm like, what's going on here? But eventually I got to the point where my Spanish was good enough that I could be like, yeah, soy de Cajamarca. Like, that's a place in Peru. It was German colony when it first happened or whatever. So the people there look a lot more American or like European. So I could get away with saying I was from Cajamarca, and they'd be like, "Oh, dang it, rats, can't get them." Yeah.
Where did you live in New York?
So I lived pretty much. We would just go around, and if we saw a for rent sign, we would say, "Hey, we would like to rent this place." So kind of everywhere. I lived with a lot of Peruvian families. There were a couple of places that I lived that we were kind of by ourselves in an apartment. But, I never, I got home and like my room, when I had left, I was like, man, my room's smaller than all the other rooms in the house. What the heck, Mom and Dad? I got home and I'm like, this is all for me. Wow. So spacious. I must be like royalty here. It was awesome. So we never really had a very big space. And typically, Arequipa is a desert region. So, like, no matter how often you shined your shoes or swept the floor, you were always just kind of covered in dirt from kind of here down. But, yeah, that's where we lived. So I lived on the map, if I can show you guys a few of the places that I lived. I lived here in Arequipa. I actually spent about 6 weeks in Lima to start out, and then from there I lived on the coast in a place called Ilo, a place about an hour inland called Moquegua, and then at the very end of my 2 years I lived in a place almost border with Chile called Tacna, which was really cool. I really liked Tacna. Yeah, question?
Did you ever go to the beach?
Yeah, I did. While I was in Ilo, I went to the beach a couple of times. It was pretty awesome. I was in that area during the winter, so there wasn't really anybody down there. Definitely some beautiful beaches down there.
Is that close enough to the equator that you don't get like cold winter?
In the coastal cities, it was pretty much the same weather year round. It never, in the winter, it never got below like 60 degrees. Summer, it did get pretty hot. It'd get up to 100 degrees during the summer. But Arequipa, because it's really high in elevation, winter and summer were very different. It rained all winter, which was awful because we would wash our clothes by hand, and you'd have to hang them up on the clothesline, and you'd be like, yeah, I did my laundry, and it'd be all sunny, and you're like, sweet, my clothes are gonna dry, and then it would rain, and you'd be like, run, we gotta get the clothes, and you'd get there, and they'd be soaking wet, and you're like, great, I just washed them, and now I can't wear them. They're still gonna have to dry, and it would rain for like 3 days at a time. So, and because it's on a mountain, the water would like congregate in the streets, and it would be like flash floods, but like everywhere, right? So you just like look outside, and like the road is like a river, and you're like, oh my gosh. So those were the days that we just kind of stayed in, played Risk, whatever there was to do. Actually, a lot of the Spanish that I learned came from watching like Phineas and Ferb and stuff in Spanish. There was this time we lived with this family that had little kids, and I got to the point where like I'd be in another room, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, they're washing like fish hooks in there. That's Phineas and Ferb. I knew the voices so well.
You've got 10 minutes. I don't know why they're getting their stuff put all the way. You have 10 minutes.
Okay.
What do teenagers do there for fun?
Video games. They go to internet cafes. They play a lot of soccer. They play a lot of soccer. Like here, it's like every once in a while you like, you know, maybe every other neighborhood has like a basketball court or something. Down there, it's like every 2 blocks, there's another concrete soccer, like, it's not a soccer field, but like, they call them los, like a lot, basically. I'm trying to think of the right word for it. But they'd have 2 goals, and people play a ton of soccer. I got pretty good. And then I got home to America and stopped playing soccer.
Why are you doing it?
I got fat. You know, people talk about the freshman 15. I did the freshman 25. So, you know, whatever. No big deal or anything. Yeah. Anything else you guys want to know?
Any more questions?
Did you take a plane to get there?
Yeah.
Did you take a bus?
Dude, it took forever. Although a boat would have taken much longer. I remember I sat by this guy, and he's like, yeah, I'm from Lima. And I'm like, oh, sick, you know, that's where I'm going. He's like, what are you doing down there? I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be a missionary. I'm gonna speak Spanish, you know? He's like, wow, how are you gonna learn? I'm like, oh, you know, we've got like a little training center down there. Got 6 weeks there. I'll be fluent by the time I leave. He's like, no way. I'm like, yes way, dude. And he's like, okay, well, do you know any Spanish? I'm like, yeah, I do. And he asked me a question, and to this day, I have no idea what he asked me. Like, he asked me a question in Spanish, and I just looked at him, and I was like, see. I was like, yes, yep, totally no. But as far as, you know, this is Spanish 3, I'm
Just
guessing?
Spanish 1, actually.
Oh, Spanish 1, lit. People say lit still, right?
No.
You leave America for 2 years and you miss all kinds of stuff. Like, I got back and everybody was like doing the whip and the nay-nay, and I was like, what is this?
That's so cool.
Yeah, I missed that. I was gone for that. I got back and watched Interstellar because I missed that movie. Wow, so good. It's Gravity, guys. I'm distracted. What was the question? No, I was talking about, you guys are in Spanish 1, right? And I know that, you know, when I took Spanish 1, I was like, what am I doing here? You know, why are they making me take this class? But honestly, like, learning Spanish has been one of the coolest, most rewarding things I've ever done in my life. Like, getting to the point where I could have a conversation with someone, that was cool. Like, of all the things, like, I mean, after high school, you know, some of the things that you'll do, people will be like, yeah, I guess that's kind of cool, but like, learning to speak another language, not only is it neat as far as like your growth as a human being, but like as far as like employment opportunities and stuff, like it's awesome. Like this is a huge opportunity, and as hard as it can be, the thing that helped me the very most with it was just to have fun with it. You know, learn to say dumb stuff. You know, I remember first person I ever taught in Spanish, I told them that all the people in Missouri were very humid and it was a very humble place. And I felt so dumb. I was like, oh my gosh, I mixed up those words. But at the same time, like, they didn't really care. Like, they got what I meant, you know? They knew I was trying. So, like, don't be afraid to just try. You know, if you're, like, if you have an opportunity to just try and speak some Spanish, go for it. Like, even if it's just a little bit, like, if somebody hasn't had the opportunity to speak Spanish in a long time, and that's their native language, like they'll appreciate anything that you can give them. Because that, like, when I was down there, if I talked to someone who spoke English, I was like, dude, this is so cool. I'd be like, hey man, how are you? And I'm like, estoy bien. I mean, I am good. How are you? You know, it was cool. Like, it felt good because it was a part of me that I had been forced to kind of give up. And a lot of people find themselves in that same circumstance. You know, they have very limited opportunities to speak their native language, and it's cool to be able to do it. Yeah.
Since you were in Peru for 2 years, like, I mean, I'm assuming you met with other people, but was it kind of hard to speak English and stuff like that whenever you came back?
You know, the hardest thing for me, there were times that, like, I couldn't remember words in either language. Like, I'd be sitting there and I'm like, okay, if I can remember the word in Spanish, I'll know it in English. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't even think of the word in Spanish or English, you know? Hardest thing was with little kids. Because, like, anything that you say, like, impulsively, like, that tends to come out a lot easier in whatever language you've been speaking the most. So, like, you know, I'd be with my family and, like, we'd be at the pool and the little kid would be doing something dumb. And I'm like, he's gonna break his head open. So I'd be like, cuidado, no hagas eso. And they'd be like, what? What does that mean, Uncle Brett? And I'm like, be careful! Don't do that! That was kind of hard. Or like, I helped someone with their political campaign when I got home. And I'm like trying to talk to people. I'm going door to door, and I'm like, hola, ¿cómo está? And they'd be like, what? And I'd be like, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. How are you? I translated for some dentists that came to Peru, which was what kind of got me into the medical translating thing. They were doing free dental work for the people. They went to Peru, they went to Bolivia, they went to Colombia. It was really cool. But they would be telling me something, and I was supposed to translate it to the person, and then the person would tell me something, and I was supposed to translate it into English for the doctor, or the dentist. And there was one time, this lady was telling me something, and she was really, like, just going after it. And so I turned to him, and I just started saying verbatim what she was saying to me, but I said it all in Spanish, and the dude's just like, part of interpreting, do you not understand? Like, I do not speak Spanish, dude. And I'm like, oh, she says that this tooth hurts and she, like, drinks a lot of coffee and her teeth are all black and I don't know. I don't know what she said, but